Hey folks, this is Elijah Henderson from the Cryptid Studies Institute. I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer before we start this amazing interview we did recently and let you know that the audio that you're about to hear did not turn out completely clean. In fact, we had many technical difficulties with this particular audio, so I want to let you know that in advance it did not turn out clean. However, the story itself is amazing enough that we wanted to upload this. It's an incredible account, and we hope you'll enjoy it just for the story alone because it is absolutely incredible. We wanted to make this disclaimer in advance because we do understand that the audio didn't turn out clean. There was multiple technical difficulties. For example, there was problems on our end. Our guest was recording the interview on his end through speakerphone, so that also added a little bit of disturbance on the line. But we do strive to get the cleanest audio that we can. This time we were not successful in that, but please, I ask you, listen to the story because it is so worth your time. It is incredible. And with that being said, please enjoy this interview.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is Johnny from Cryptid Studies Institute.
And this is Elijah Henderson from Cryptid Studies Institute.
We're here today with a gentleman who has an amazing story that I think you'll all love. But we will let him tell it to you in his own words. Well, sir, welcome to the show. We'd like you to, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about your story.
Well, I'm 74 years old, fairly decent shape, born and raised here in Murrayville, Tennessee, small town right outside of Knoxville, and born in a community called Scratch Ankle. We'll go into that later if you want to know where it got its name at.
We'd love that.
Well, everybody had a dog back when I was a young boy, and all of them had fleas. When you walk through the community, you'd be itching at your ankles because of the fleas all over you. So that's why they called it Scratch Ankle, and it really was.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But my story involves an old deserted black church. Got nothing to do whether it's black or white, I wouldn't imagine, but that was what it was known as, and it'd been deserted for quite a number of years. All the windows were knocked out of it, and just been deserted a long time. But it had a tin roof on it, which kept it in pretty good shape, kept it upright, didn't rot down. And this was located out in a wooded area next to Fort Loudon Lake down here, and up on top of a hill. And there were no houses or any other buildings around. There were a couple old mud roads run through there, not owned by the city or the county or anybody. It's just whoever owned the land had a couple old dirt roads going through there. And I hung out at a little place called the Snack Bar, and back in those days, that was 59 years ago, you had your young guys, young people and older people kind of hang around together. I'm talking about 6 and 7 year olds, and 16 and 18 year olds. They don't do that today, but that's the way we did it back then. And the guy came in there with a story at the snack bar one day. I was gone, saying that he saw something down on the lake, down next to that old black church. Apparently people parked down there a little bit, boys and girls. And they come in with a story this guy had told him about him and his girlfriend were in the car, and they were in the back seat, and for whatever that matters. And all of a sudden she started screaming and waving and looking past him, and he turned around and looked, and there was something big, tall, black animal that looked somewhat like a human being, general form, standing outside the window looking down on them. And of course, they jumped up and it just turned around and walked off. And word got to us over there at the snack bar where we all hang around. There was probably 10 or 12 of us kids, anywhere from 10, 12 years old to 17, 18 years old. And some of them wanted to go down there and look at it and see if they could see it. And so they got together that first night, and I couldn't go. I had something else to do. telling a story of how they went down there, and the old gravel road went up and made a little bitty circle there, a turnaround circle, and the church was down maybe 50 yards, 40 yards down into the woods, down on the side of a hill. And so they walked around a little bit and found looked like some animals or something else were making a bed in that little circle. The grass was, never been mowed or anything because it's deserted. But there's a big area in there, probably 10 foot by 10 foot, that's all wore down or something, been laying there. But they didn't think too much about it. Then they went on down to the church, got in the church, looked around, didn't see anything, and one of them said, "Why don't we just turn our flashlights out and sit here and be quiet and see what happens, if anything?" So that's what they did. They all sat down up there next to the podium. And a few minutes later, there was a noise at the door. And they were all inside, but there was a noise at the door. So they all turned the lights back on and shined it back towards the door. And the door had about a 8-inch by 8-inch window pane in it, which was broken out. And when they shined their lights on the door, there was something standing there with its face pushed next to that hole where they could see it, in black, hairy face. And so it kind of shook them up, and then the door opened, and this big, tall, black, real skinny thing, with short hair on it, black hair, opened the door and walked in the room, started coming up the hallway, and scared them all. Now, I'm laughing at them when they're telling it. I think it's funny. I think they're telling a lie and all that stuff. And making fun of them. Well, anyway, when it came up the hallway, everybody started jumping out those windows. Now, the church was built on the side of a pretty steep hill. And on one side, it was maybe a 4-foot drop. And now on the other side, a 10, 12-foot drop. Those guys were running through the windows and diving out, not climbing out, but diving out. That's how scared they were. Now, that's what's told to me. I wasn't there that night. And this one boy, I'll not repeat his name, but I know who he was, and he dove for the window, missed the window a little bit, hit his head on the window sill, and knocked him back inside, kind of dazed him. He kind of came to himself after just a short period of time. I looked up, and that thing was up there turning down into the gorge in between the pews. And he got up and jumped on out the window. And they all run back to the car and go home. Now, they were telling me this the next day, and I was really horse laughing. I thought it was funny, and how somebody maybe was down there, pulling a joke on them. So they wanted to go back, some of them wanted to go back down there the next night, or that night, and I could go, so I went. About half of them had been down there, but the night before didn't go. They were scared to go. And so we went down there and drove around that little turnaround and parked the car right straight in front of the path where the church was, the path that went down through the church from the road. And there was a graveyard over there also. It was back behind the car. The church was on the driver's side of the car, and the graveyard was back behind the car, probably 50 yards or so. All right, so as I was saying, just trying to give you an idea where you visualize in your own mind what the setup was down there. We parked the car on that old dirt road, and the graveyard was towards the back of the car, about 50 yards from it, and the church was off the road down into the woods, about 30 yards, I'd say 35 yards on the driver's side, and it was pointed out. In other words, got in the car and started up. We just pulled straight out the road. And we looked around there for a little while just to see what the general thing was around the car and in the bushes there a little bit, and really didn't find anything interesting. And so somebody said, "Well, let's go down here to church." And it so happened that I was the last one in line. There was 6 or 7 of us, and I was the last one in line and kind of dragging behind a little bit. And I got down the woods there about pretty close to the church, I guess 30 yards or so. the road. And big, tall, extremely skinny thing. Looked like it had black hair all over it. And I remember this is at night. I should have told you that, I guess. But there was a pretty good sized moon out so I could see it, okay. And just as soon as I saw that, I scared the hound out of me. And I mean, really scared me. My thought was, this thing gonna kill all of us if we don't kill it or hurt it first. So I charged it. By the time I saw it until the time I got to it, probably about 3, maybe 4 seconds at the most. And what I was going to do, I was going to hit that thing as hard as I could in the side of the neck with my flashlight. Small end of my flashlight, knock it down, and then do whatever. I was really shook up. So I picked up my speed, and then when I got to it, I swung that flashlight in my hand and hit it right in the side of the neck. Now, its neck was right in front of my face. Okay, now that's how tall this thing was. And it was bent down on its knees. And later, after this is over with, I kind of calculated how tall that would make that thing if it straightened up, and then you added its head in there, where would the top of its head be? And it come up somewhere between 7.5 and 8 foot. But now, it was not what you call your typical people who talk about Bigfoot. It didn't have a long hair on it, wasn't muscled up, didn't smell, just tall and skinny. I mean, its arms are down to its knees, and its legs were long and skinny. It just looked like it's all fur and bones. Wasn't much muscle to it, I didn't think. And so when I hit that thing in the side of the neck with that flashlight, I expected it to, show some response to being hit real hard like that, and it did. And all it did was wrap its arms around me and jump back into the bushes. Just from one leap, it jumped from the middle of the road over, pretty good way over into the tall grass that was there. The grass was well over knee high because it never got mowed or anything. And I landed on my back with my leg up under me, my foot way back under my back, and it messed my leg up pretty good. I missed the whole football camp that year. It was supposed to the next week go to football camp out of town, and but I wasn't able to do that because of my leg. So we hit the ground. It just picked me up just like I didn't wait nothing. It picked me up, jumped with me, and landed on top of me, and it was on its hands and knees. It was between its knees. It was growling and snapping its mouth together. Have you ever heard of a dog snapping flies? And the pretty loud pop. Well, this is, oh Lord, I won't say 20 or 30 times, maybe more, louder than what a dog sounds. But you can't make that noise with your regular teeth, because I'll talk about that here in just a minute. But it's trying to bite me. I'm on the ground, it's on its knees and hands, and it's got its head down there next to my head trying to bite me. And I've got my head over against its leg, and it's just like a few inches being able to get to me with its mouth and those teeth. And so it started trying to back up. Well, when it backed up a little bit, I slid right with it. I wasn't going to turn loose those legs for nothing, because that's the only thing keeping me from turning my head up. And so there's two of those guys that come up there with me, and one of them said, "My God, look at the claws on that thing's hand." Now, it was his exact word. Scared me even worse than what I was scared. And it didn't make any attempt to paw me. All it was trying to do was bite me. It was growling and snapping those teeth together. It was extremely loud teeth, and I don't think. And let me interrupt you right here. Just, you asked me the other day on the phone about having a muzzle, and I told you no. But I got to think this, and since I talked to you last, I don't believe anything that other them up to make those jaws teeth snapping noises like this thing was making. I worked a human being. I tried to snap my teeth together, and I couldn't get much of a sound out of it. So my guess is it probably did have a muzzle on it, but it was, remember, it was dark that night. I mean, it was that night, and didn't have much light to go by. I only saw it for 3 or 4 seconds before it had me on the ground, and I never saw anything except the leg after that. But anyway, I think he decided to take a kick at it, I reckon, and then all those other guys come up, and apparently all that together, by the other 3 or 4 guys coming on up, and him taking a kick at that thing, it jumped up and took off, and it was gone. It was fast, and I've never seen those that fast whatsoever. But it was just instant. He had to run, and it got up on 2 legs and gone. Well, so I got up and couldn't walk hardly because my leg was hurt, and so we all got back in the car. Was talking about it, and all of a sudden, man, I didn't know what was going on. I'd never seen nothing like that. I didn't think it's nobody, no man, no joke or anything like that because of the way it's done. And you need something, Richard? No, okay. And so we were sitting there in the car. All of us got back in the car talking about it, and all of a sudden, from a graveyard, which was towards behind the back of the car, maybe 50 yards away at the most, 40. And just all of a sudden moaning and groaning and great big chains rattling. Now that sounds like some kind of, noise, sound effects for a scary movie. That was what was there. And I'm talking about great big chains. I'm not talking about small chains. And so we all snapped our head over there, and looked back out the back window. And at the graveyard. And then there was 3 little lights come on in the graveyard, equal distance apart. Maybe 2 outside lights were probably 6, 8 feet from each other. But then they were about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, something like that. You couldn't see anything around them because the light is kind of like an old glowworm that glows in the night. So you can see it, but you can't. It doesn't put off enough light to see anything else. And I'm still trying to figure out what was going on, and didn't know, is this a joke? Is this real? What's going on? So I leaned my head out the window, and I thought this would scare it off. If that's people, this would scare them off. They'll quit that and they'll move on. I hollered, somebody give me that. I'll just tell you exactly what I said. Somebody give me a GD gun, I'll kill them SOBs, except I didn't say SOBs. And it doesn't happen. Now, I hollered it loud, okay, before they could be sure and hear it. Nothing happened, it just kept going, just like it was. And so I hollered it again twice, louder if I could holler it louder. And nothing happened. So at that point in time, I got kind of nervous again because I didn't have I had no fear of a gun. So the driver of the car had started the car up. He was sitting there with his foot on the brake, and he was watching it through the rearview mirror. And he finally had enough. So he let off on the brake pedal, started rolling forward, and just as soon as he let off on that brake pedal, there was 3 of those things like had me down, appeared right behind the car, 2 foot beyond the bumper, side by side. Kind of maybe a coincidence about that little light. There's 3 little lights over in the graveyard, and 3 of them things. And so it kind of, I don't know why he did it, but he hit his brakes again. And when he did, they disappeared. They didn't jump out of the way, they didn't fall out of the way, they didn't run out of the way. They just instantly disappeared. Well, he decided it was time to get out of there, so he took his foot back off the brake, throwed the gas to it. As soon as he did that, those 3 things appeared right back behind the car again, but they didn't move with the car. They just stood there in the road while we went down the road and down the hill and out of sight. And that's the funny thing could see when you're looking out the window in that moonlight, three of those big old things right there in that road. Went back up the next day. Now again, I'm hobbling around because my leg was tore up pretty bad. Found an old mud hole was in the road, not too far from where it happened. And we was just all kind of looking around, daylight. And there was a footprint inside of that mud puddle over there. And there's two footprints in it. One of them was really good, and the other one was kind of where it slid and messed it up and part way in the water and all that stuff. But went and got back into his car and got a tape measure out of his daddy's tool. Went over and measured it, and the footprint, big old toe, it looked exactly like mine or your footprint would look, except it was a whole lot bigger. No shoe, no nothing. And it was 17.5 inches long and 6.5 inches wide, or it was this other figure, and I forget which way it was, or it was 16.5 inches long by 7.5 inches wide. So I don't remember which one's correct. And we actually put a rock over it, big old rock, to hide it and save it for a while. But that is pretty much the story. And we went back down there. I used to go back down there because that got to be pretty well known around town. A lot of people want to go back down there. And I would go down with them occasionally, or usually. And when we would get there, I wouldn't go with them. I wouldn't get out of the car. When they got out of the car and headed down there towards the church, well, I'd get in the back seat, roll the windows up, lock the doors, and get in the back seat, lay down on the floor, and hide as best I could in the floorboard in the back seat until they got back. And the only time I got out after that I can remember, there was some boys come over, some big old boys with baseball bats. Somebody said something about them being a football team. I don't know whether that's true or not, but they looked at and they had baseball bats, and I thought, boy, the Reed boys can't handle that thing with that baseball bat. Nothing is. So I got out with them, went down to church and looked around, didn't see anything, and we fooled around there a little while in the dirt, and all of a sudden we heard a noise there on the ceiling of the church. And we looked up, everybody did, shining flashlights up, and there was something up there walking down the length of the church. And you could see where on the right foot the board come down, and the left foot board go down, and the right foot come up, and you could see the boards moving under the foot as whatever it was. And this one board he's crazy, dead now. But he said, "How can I get up there in that?" And I said, "You don't want to go up there." I said, "That thing take your head off, maybe." "No, I want to look. So these two of them big old boys took him over to there was an entrance to the ceiling up there for people to climb up. And there used to be a part of a ladder there, but they just reached down and picked him up, put him about shoulder high through that hole, and he took that light and looked around and said, "I don't see nothing." They laid him back down. A week later, he went back down there and burned the church down. So the church is gone. And so of all the times I know of people go down there, I only know the 3 times anybody saw anything. It was that first time that boy and girl in the seat, back seat of the car. Then that night, those guys went down there, and I couldn't go the first night that we went down there. I couldn't go. That's when that thing come up to the front door, and everybody dove out the window. And then the next night when I went down there, and that happened to me. And besides that, and then that walking on the ceiling, we saw that. That's the only times I know of anybody seeing anything down there. I've talked a couple of days since I talked to y'all last, and got a few more details. Would you like to hear about them?
Yes,
Sure,
sir, we would.
absolutely would.
Okay. Now, if you remember when this first started, I walked away from the car, and I was about 30 yards been standing there watching us when we got out of the car and messed around the car there a little bit. Then walked down to the church, towards the church, because I was only walking about 30 yards. And the time I turned around and run back up there, that thing was up there next to the car. So it must have been over there in the bushes or somewhere watching us all. And for whatever that means. Secondly, you asked me about, one of you asked me if that thing had a muzzle on it. And I told you no, but I've thought about that some more since then. You know, it was nighttime. It wasn't quite a full moon. I'm not sure exactly, but it was a pretty good size moon. So I could see its outline, but I couldn't see really detail, so I couldn't tell you whether it had a muzzle or not. But after thinking about it, I believe that we can pretty much prove whether it did or not without me having to see it. When that thing was popping its jaws at me, I don't think anything with a flat face like I've got and you've got and cats have got and so forth can pop them teeth like that, because I've tried and I can't hardly get any noise out of mine whatsoever.
So you think maybe it did have a muzzle?
Well, here's what we need to do on that. You guys know any veterinarians, or maybe some kind of, it looks like these old archaeologists, I guess, and ask them, does the thing have to have a muzzle on it like an alligator popping its teeth, or a wolf, or a dog? I've heard all those pop their teeth, a bear. Okay, but they've all got muzzles. Now, if you take that muzzle off, like on a bobcat or on a human being, I don't believe you can make that great, real loud popping noise. And that was extremely loud. You had to be there, and you're watching that television about animals and stuff. I'm sure you've seen old bears snapping their teeth.
Yes, sir.
And,
Now, there's a lot of smart people in this cryptid field. We could probably ask some of them what they thought about that. And
I almost bet you that the answer to that's going to be, to make a loud popping noise, you're gonna have to have a muzzle on you. Because probably those jaws are made to where they'll open wider than, humans would. And they're longer and they got more bite force. So I think we can be pretty sure whether or not that would be true, that you have to have a muzzle to make that thing loud, because I'm talking that loud. And I've seen on TV a time or two old bears snapping their teeth at each other, and you can hear that pop. So you might want to check on that if you can. I've got a couple. I thought that was interesting. That thing was up there watching us while we was at the car, and we had no idea it was there. And we can prove that because I was away, walked 10 seconds or so away from the car. The time I turned around and run back up there, it was at the car, walking towards the car, about 10 feet from it. So we didn't know it, but we were being spied on and watched by this thing the whole time we was up there.
That abandoned church was probably a bit of a home for it.
That's a possibility, yeah.
And brother, I don't think you never caught an eye shine color off of this, did you?
I'm sorry, what?
You never caught an eye shine color off of this, did you?
No, I don't think I ever. You said eye shine? You talking about the eye shine in the dark?
Yes, sir.
No, I don't think I ever really shined a flashlight at it, because when I was jogging up through there, I wasn't expecting to meet anything like this, and I had the flashlight. I just jogging, relaxing, had the flashlight down in my hand, down around my hip. And when I saw that thing, I just went immediately into overdrive, just as hard as I could run, because I thought I was going to run over it.
now, you were a football player, weren't you?
Yep. I thought I was going to run over it, and it's just like running into a brick wall. That thing, I hit it, and I hit that neck and throwed its arms around me, and that was it. And that was 3 to 4 seconds, and I was on the ground. And it's hard to really describe how something that skinny can so strong it just manhandled me. And I've wrestled, boxed, and all that other stuff, and the karate and all that. And this thing is just don't mess with it. But I thought the reason I charged it, because normally I've been out in the woods. I've seen bear, I've seen hogs, wild hogs, been on the ground with them. No great big deal. But this thing, when I saw it, I didn't think it. Just something run through my mind said this thing gonna kill every one of you. You better get it before it can get you. And I thought, well, maybe I can disable it or something, At least to get a lick in before it kills me. And I think if I'd been by myself and did that, and those other boys hadn't come up there, I think that thing would kill me. I had my left cheek up against its thigh, and there was a hair. I can't tell you how long it was. I can tell you it was pretty short hair, and it was skinny, and there's no smell, and it doesn't appear to me to be anything like what's called Bigfoot. I've saw those movies, and all that, and it didn't bear any resemblance to them except it was tall and had hair. But
Sir, could you see any genitalia on it?
no. No, I wasn't worried about that. I was worried about getting my head bit off.
I understand. I just didn't know if it happened to be a detail you might have noticed.
No, I know. I'm exactly the way you asked that. You don't want to get all the detail you can, but if I start with the feet and look up that thing, all I can see is real skinny. Now I'm talking about this thigh. Was quite a bit smaller than mine. It's bony. It's almost like all it was hair and leather and bone. But it had, it's like somebody about to starve to death. But now I saw these old basketball players, NBA, and some people get that big, 7.5 foot, and real skinny. They don't weigh much, but let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah. Did you watch Skinwalker Ranch last night?
No, sir. I didn't even know it come on.
Okay, it's on now. Came on last week. New season. Now let me tell you something that's weird. I was watching that, okay, and this guy, they were all grouped up outside, and these are scientists, and they've got the equipment and stuff, and they've got guns with them, and because all the things that's happened out there, and this one guy, he heard something over in the bushes. He jerked his light out with his pistol. Now, I believe these guys. I don't think that's just a bunch of bullcrap show. And they, he could see it over in the dark. Couldn't see what it was. It's kind of, with little few bushes out there on that land. And so this guy had a gun, pistol pulled out, he had a flashlight pulled out, and they got a glimpse of it. And that one guy said, it's crazy, that scientist. He said, it's crazy. He said, that thing looked like a rectangle, red, orangish glow, but it didn't see no heads, didn't see no legs, didn't see no tail. He said, then it just disappeared. He said, it didn't run off. This is while he was talking to that other guy. Said, it didn't run off, it didn't jump out of the way, it didn't drop on the ground, it just disappeared, left. I thought, now, that leaving porch is like what happened to me down there. And then he said something that really struck a chord. He said, I don't know about you guys. He said, but as soon as I saw that, he said, I was just flooded with terror. He said, I was scared like I'd never been scared before. Now, that's basically what happened to me down there, okay? That was fear that I'd never had before.
Now, sir, let me ask you this, and please don't be offended, because I actually have a point. Are you given to telling lies? You're not, are you?
I ain't told a lie in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's good to know.
No, let me tell you this. I'm Christian. I wouldn't take a chance on going to hell for telling a lie. you know, when I was a young man or a young boy, whatever, I've told my share of, but since I've, you know, become a Christian, I don't lie. And that's the honest God truth. And
Well,
wouldn't unless it was, you know, it'd save somebody's life or something like that. So no, I don't lie. I hadn't lied in years, and I'm known to be a person that if I tell you something, you can believe it.
well, you told me that the other day, and I just wanted to make sure that the listening audience knew that about you.
Oh, okay.
Because it's not something that you tend to brag about. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that you were a man of integrity.
Yep, I think that I am, and I don't have any reason to think that I ain't as good a person as I could be, but nobody really is. There's a few out there really wonderful, good Christians, but I mess up, you know, and do things I shouldn't be doing, but it's nothing that to hurt anybody. It's not lied. I bet a long time ago, if you tell a lie, you might as well keep on telling them because nobody's going to believe anything you say from that day forward.
That is very true.
Yeah. I'm trying to look here if there's anything else. There was two things on that Skinwalker Ranch that made me, you know, one was that instant terror. That, you know, normally I'm not scared of stuff. I really not. You know, I was raised rough and I can take care of myself and all that stuff. But when I saw that thing, you know, it just, I was in terror. And that's what that scientist said. And that was right after they saw it. He used to tell me, this other guy, he said, oh, I was scared to death. He said, I was terrorized. And that other guy said, I was too. And that's just some similarity, you know. Not a whole lot, but some. And I don't know how to see if I've got anything else.
Well, while you're thinking, I'd like to clear something up. Now, you said that this thing actually injured your leg to the point you weren't even able to go to football camp, were you?
That's correct. That's correct, yes.
That's a pretty terrible injury.
Did you ever find out exactly what it did to your knee?
No, it was, you know, back in those days, at least in my family, didn't go to the hospital unless there's blood and guts. And generally, you let it heal yourself. And I'll tell you exactly, you're wanting to know how bad it was. I could stand up, okay, and I could walk, but there was no way that I could run. There's no way I could practice football. And it did eventually heal up, but it took weeks. It wasn't over with in no day or two.
So it roughed you up pretty bad.
It when it picked me up and jumped with me, somehow or another my leg got back behind me, and when I hit the ground on my back and hit on top of me, my leg was under me, and so it did that damage to it there. But it wasn't permanent. But I sure didn't like missing football camp on account of it.
I expect not. Now, were there any women around you guys at the time?
No.
Even the first night when it was originally seen, no women involved?
It was that guy that I never talked to, and I don't know who it was, and never did see who it was, that told one of our gang over there just, or, you know, one of the guys that hang around there. He told one of my friends about it, and then my friend told us about it. That was the only one involved. They were both in the back seat. Now, what they were doing, I don't know. I didn't talk to them myself. But, you know.
And I don't think this ever came up. If I did, I missed it. Could you describe kind of what the conditions were when you seen this? Was it warmer? Was it colder? What was the weather like that day?
It was, I'm thinking about what I was trying to think about what I had on. Clothes. It wasn't winter. So it was summertime, and I had short sleeve. And I didn't wear any shorts in those days, so I'm sure I had on 5 blue jeans. The moon was on about the front of the probably about 10 o'clock, like on the clock. There, going to the left at about the 10 o'clock position. So it wasn't always, it wasn't straight overhead. It was a little bit more than a quarter way up. And it was a good sized moon. I don't know what it's full moon or not. I have no idea. But it was a good enough moon to where you could see something with it. I don't know if you've ever been out in the dark much, but you can actually read a newspaper sometimes out when there's a full moon out.
Yes, sir, you sure can.
Yeah.
Now, was the fur or the hair, was it coarse or was it a softer hair?
Don't know. Remember, I got a look at that thing. It lasted 3 to 4 seconds. I come out of the woods, charged it. And when I come out of the woods and saw it, the time I charged it and got to it and hit it, that was 3 or 4 seconds. And I was running, okay, and I wasn't shining my flashlight on it.
Right, I was just thinking about your head being up against its leg.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't thinking about its leg. I was thinking about that damn head up against my head.
Right. That's one of the scariest things I've heard in anybody's encounter is this thing trying to bite.
Yeah. Well, it didn't attack me. I attacked it. When I come around the corner and out of the woods, it was standing there looking at the car, okay? Facing the car, about 10 foot behind the bumper. I'm directly to its left, and it heard me or something, I guess. And it just turned its head and looked at me just so nonchalantly. I mean, it didn't whip its head around. It didn't jump around. It didn't move except basically for its head. It turned around and looked at me. Now remember, I'm running towards it. So when I got somewhat closer to it, then it turned around and faced me and bent itself down at the knees. And like I said, when I hit it with that flashlight, its neck was right where my eyes were, basically. And so you extrapolate from that and go up to the top of its head and figure that's another probably foot or so. And then, I've actually measured, bent over, with my knees bent. You know how somebody's going to try to run over you in football practice. Those guys get right down a little bit,
Right.
Get ready. And you take that and I did that, and I've had a guy do that and had to measure it and had him straighten up. And the distance come out between 7.5, 8 foot. That's pretty close. And so, you can't really get a whole lot of information with your eyes when it's nighttime. You're running, you're seeing some kind of monster over there you think gonna kill you, and scared half to death, and you only got 3 or 4 seconds to look at it. You ain't gonna get in a whole lot of detail about, well, it didn't have eyebrows, and stuff like that. All I saw was a black object with arms and legs and a head. That's about all I can tell you on that.
And you couldn't tell if the head was conical shaped. I'm sure you probably didn't even get that much information.
No.
But this I've got to know. What in the world possessed you to attack that thing?
I thought it was going to kill all of us. That's what run through my mind. Just as soon as I saw it. I mean, instantly. And here, I can tell you exactly what I thought. Here's my exact words. This thing going to kill all of us. We got to try to do something to hurt it. And I did that on the run. As soon as I seen it, I picked up. My brain told me, it's going to kill you first. If you turn around and run, you're dead, and so are the other people with you. I mean, your mind can operate pretty quick.
Isaiah, if you know this guy, it wouldn't be hard for you to believe he tackled that thing.
Right. Well, he sounds like a character.
He's he was a character. He got some left too, I tell you.
Now, this will sound like a weird question also, and I know it does, but everything actually means something. Have there ever been missing persons or killed animals or anything like that in that region that you know of?
Okay.
At the restaurant.
Okay. First of all, let me say that you can ask me any question that you want to. I'm not going to be offended. I worked, I was president of the local union there, and then I went to work for International, work 80 hours a day, and so I'm a people person now. Wasn't when I first took those jobs, but I understand why you want to ask these questions. They mean something to you, so you can ask me anything you want to. Now, that night on the way home, I believe it was that night, it may have been the next day. Anyway, we went into a hamburger joint to get something to eat, and there was a cop sitting in there, a policeman sitting in there by himself. And I said, let's go talk to him. He works for the county. Let's see if he's ever heard anything about this thing or whatever. He said, well, as a matter of fact, we have. He said they had an initiation for a UT student over there in Knoxville, and them was his people that were with him took him down there to a tree at this place you were talking about. He said, I know about that place. And he said they tied him to a tree and left him there all night, and when they come back to get him the next morning, he went straight to a mental institution for a few days. Now that's all I know. Let refresh my memory some more. You're wanting to know if there's any other incidents going on down there, or if I'd ever.
Or if anybody ever came up mysteriously, just disappeared, or anybody complained of having animals killed or anything of that nature?
No, I'm glad you said that though. But what was on the news about that time, TV, and in the newspapers was that they was some kind of big, tall, hairy monsters walking down the main highway up in New Jersey. I believe it was in New Jersey. It was one of those northeastern states. And that went on for 2 or 3 months. Every once in a while, somebody would call in and report that they were driving. There was this big thing. Looked somewhat like that thing down there about that time. And it was traveling south, okay? But now, this was, if I'm not mistaken, that was after I had my experience down there. But, so that was the only thing going on. Now, as far as me, I'd never been down there before. I'd never heard anything about it before. Didn't know the guy and the girl that was in the car. Didn't know them. Wasn't with those guys on the first trip where it come walking in, but they all told the same story while I horse laughed them. And the only time I know of anybody ever seen it was the boy and the girl. Then they told my friends, and my friends went down there without me because they had something to do with that. They saw it, and then I saw it, my friends, that night that I was with it. And then they were up in the attic. That thing walked up in the attic. Now, I did, I told you I went back down there after that. People wanted me to go with them. Sometimes we'd sit there in the car. Now, this is going to sound crazy to you, but this is the way it is. You know how a horse sounds when it's galloping?
I do.
Take one leg away. Sound like a three-legged horse down there. That's what it sounds like. You hear it just about every time you're down there. But it was missing one leg. It was toot, 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 toot. Never did see nothing. Never did know what caused it. Don't know the day what's caused it.
And how much time had passed from the time you had your encounter until you went down there with the guys with the ball bats?
One with the ball bats, it was probably, you're asking something I was not testified to in court, because, that's a long time ago and a lot of different people. But my guess is probably on that one, I remember that it was towards the end of this kind of stuff kind of tailed off, you know, and then everybody quit worrying about it, and then they'll sort of say it. I would say this is purely a speculation, I guess. 4 to 6 weeks after that, after it had a hold of me.
Okay.
Now, in between that time, I went down there. I'm guessing again, you know, you don't pay attention to stuff like this. I was 15 years old. That's 60 years ago. But I would say I went back down there somewhere in the neighborhood 10 to 15 times. And never saw anything. Most of the time, I wasn't out there sick because I was in the floorboard in the back seat. So why I go down there, I don't know, because I was scared absolutely to death. When I went home after that, it happened to me, I asked my dad about it. And he said, well, you know, he said, could it have been a bear? He said, you know, a bear can get up on the sign with a leg. And I said, no, it wasn't no bear. He said, well, son, I don't know what it was. But for a long time after that, I'd get to go to bed. I'd pull the covers up over my head and I had one window in the bedroom. And I'd lay there with my head covered up and a little hole for my eye to look out of and watch that window. Because I was afraid that thing followed me home. I was scared to death. I did that for months and months and then finally got to where I sleep. But when I grew up, go deer hunting. I don't know if I want anybody to know this or not. Go deer hunting when I get out of it. If we go out before daylight, as soon as I had to get into the woods from camp, get everybody's size, by the time me and Big Tree and I'd back up to us, that noise is back. I would back it, or that noise. I would back up to the tree and load that gun, and I'd actually take a safety options against that tree. Because I scared that thing be out in the woods somewhere with me. You know, it didn't make sense to do that, but that's what it did.
That is an absolutely fascinating account.
I would say even incredible.
Well, I told it as true as I can remember it. You know, I know time tells you lose some details and add some others, but I've thought about this a few days since I last talked to you guys. You know, just to make sure that I remember everything exactly right. And did I tell you that, I don't know whether I skipped this part or not, that while that thing had me down, that guy standing there, one of my buddies said, my God, look at the claws on that thing's hand. Now that's his exact words, and that's burned into my memory. But that scared me. I mean, you know, I thought, boy, you had it. You have had it.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and that's very interesting because, like Bigfoot type creatures, normally have nails instead of claws.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I don't think this is Bigfoot. Okay, Bigfoot don't appear and disappear. At least I don't think so. And he don't have claws. You know, all the accounts I've heard of Bigfoot, not skinny. I mean, bone skinny, real skinny. You know, this thing didn't have long hair. It wasn't muscular at all. Oh, it ripped me apart just like I was. You know.
And curiously, when it disappeared, did it vanish in the blink of an eye, or did it kind of fade away?
Well, now, you're talking about 2 times, dear. One time when it had me down and got up, it run off. Okay, it run off very, very fast. When I used to tell the story, I'd say it's like a dog outrunning a human. You know, there's no comparison there. I said, this thing, it jumped up, and that's when my other friends come up, and I guess that's why it jumped up and turned and took off running and run down the road off the direction from where it actually come from. I guess it's behind the car. This was in front of the car. But it was just gone. It wasn't just gone. It run, but it was running extremely standing sitting there, yeah, okay. He's sitting there with his brakes on, and we was looking out the back. Didn't see nothing, okay? Didn't see nothing. Heard that moaning and groaning. And he decided it's time to leave. He took his foot off the brake, and those things appeared. They didn't, and they were right 2 foot behind the bumper of the car. Right there, 3 of them, side by side. Perfectly stretched out there. And they didn't jump in front. They wouldn't land on the bottom. On the ground, you don't sneak up and jump up all of a sudden. They didn't come in from side. They were just all 3 instantly there. And when he hit his brake lights again, they instantly disappeared. You know, there's more lights there when you hit the brake lights. So if anything, if you can see them without the brake lights, you can see them even better with it.
Exactly.
They instantly disappeared.
And how does it make you feel to know that there may have been, while you were getting attacked, 2 others just standing there watching you?
You know, I've never thought of that. But I never thought till we talked, and I was thinking about this over the last 2 days, that thing was watching us up there, you know, while we were milling around the car. Because it had to be, because it was there within seconds after I, you know, walked into the woods. And then when I turned around and walked, he was already there. Where were the other 2? And are they more than 3? I don't know. You know, I know there's at least 3 or 1 that appears to be 3. This has got me confused because I thought I could figure out what that was. But every time you figure one thing out, there's about 3 different things in there that keeps it from being somebody playing the joke. You know, people playing the joke on you, they can't appear and they can't disappear. They normally don't have teeth like that. You know, and so you think, well, you know, there's that big bit, well, this thing appears and disappears. And it makes that noise over in the graveyard. And it runs so fast. Why did that thing get up and run off when it finally got off of me? Why did it run off? Why didn't it just disappear like those other 3 did? You know, I've tried to solve this for 60 years, and I can't solve it. The only thing I can think of is, you know, closest to now is alien. You know, and that don't seem to fit. Well, then an alien attacked me. Well, I attacked it. It didn't attack me.
So you don't have a whole lot more answers than you did back then, right?
Yeah, it's weird. I was 15 years old, and I had no preconceived notions about flying saucers. What? Flying saucers? What? You know, there are monsters in the woods. Where I lived at that time, remember, this was back in the good old days before you had child molesters and criminals killing people and all that stuff. And I lived about 2 miles away from the snack bar, but because I'd grown up being around the snack bar and then moved off, I had to walk home. And we'd stay up playing, you know, Annie over, you know, kickball, hide and seek, till 12 o'clock at night. And I'm 7, 8 years old, walking 2 miles after dark through a big old patch of woods. It didn't bother me a bit, you know, and didn't bother my mom and dad. But what question was you asked that I was answering? I've talked too long. I forgot the question.
Oh, you're good.
Let's see if you don't remember either, do you?
Well, I kind of wanted to present you with this. If you were ever given opportunity, would you ever go back in the woods and look for something like that?
Sure. I would now, but I'd be loaded.
I don't blame you.
I'd have a pistol on one side, a knife on the other side, over here rifle in my hand.
Well, you got to be prepared in case something happens, you know?
Yeah. But now, am I afraid to go in the woods? No. Not anymore, because that's been 60 years. Apparently that thing's gone. No.
If anything, it's probably filled you with curiosity about it, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but with that church burnt down, and him seeing it walking up to there and then going back down there and burning the church down, I just wonder if he burnt that thing up.
And I think you mentioned to me on the phone the other day that there's a little subdivision there now, right?
Yeah, it's all gone basically now. But just come over, we'll go look at it, if you want to.
I'd love to see that sometime, even what it's at now.
Yeah. We'll be glad to escort you over there.
And what's the landscape around there now? I mean, is there still some woods around the region?
All that's still there. What I remember when this all happened was it's a big expanse of woods, and in the middle of the woods is a big TVA lake, Tennessee Valley Authority Lake. And those woods probably, I don't know, at least a couple miles wide and a mile deep, I would imagine. And somewhere in that neighborhood, and they've got that one subdivision on top. I don't think it's a whole big subdivision, is it? No. So it's, you can still get a good general idea of what's going on there, or what went on. You know, it's not disfigured completely where you wouldn't recognize it.
Right. So there's certainly still land there that something could still be hiding on.
Yeah. Yep. Sure enough.
Well, we would certainly love to make it down to that region at some point.
It'd be great to go, be able to come down and walk through it with you.
Okay. Come on down. We'll do it. We'll feed you supper or dinner or whatever.
Well, we
Well,
certainly
sounds good,
like
brother.
to eat.
All right, Elijah. And who's your other buddy there?
Johnny.
Johnny. Okay. But we
All
definitely
righty,
got
well, ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to have been able to speak with you.
Okay.
And brother, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Sure thing. See ya.
All right, brother. Bye-bye.